Hello and welcome to the FSF Podcast. I am Tim. I am your host. And as a reminder, this is a show that is made by nerds for nerds. So welcome to our nerdery. Our guest today is a nerdy, geeky actor, and we are so glad to have him because not only is he an actor, a voice actor, but he's also a singer and just got some really cool credits to his name. You can look for him in a band called Main Chain. He's the lead singer and guitarist for that band, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But you've definitely seen him in shows like The Boys. You've heard him in animes like Mobile Suit Gundam, and you've seen him, or heard him rather, in video games like Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, and of course, most notably as in the wildly successful Marvel Rivals as the Winter Soldier. And that's just kind of scratching the surface of some of the things that our guest has been part of. I am very excited to welcome Eliah Mountjoy to the FSF Podcast. Welcome to the show, Eliah.
Hey, thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's not every day we get to talk to the voice of the Winter Soldier, so I'm always excited when we have another opportunity to talk to somebody that's in the Marvel universe and doing the fun Marvel things. So, yeah, welcome to the show, and we're glad to have you on. You've got a really cool resume, not just of the voice acting things and the things that you've done on the camera. But like I said, we're going to talk about your music here in a few moments. But seriously, guys, go check out Main Chain. It's a really cool band. Yeah, that's very cool. So one of the first things we always like to do, Eliah, when we get people on the show is we want to talk to them about their backgrounds, their origins, because as I always say every week, nerds love a good origin story. So in the story of Eliah Mountjoy, what is the origin? How did you get here?
Oh, man, the origin story. Well, my personal origin story has nothing to do with Hydra. But I did, when I was very young, I always just had a penchant towards the creative stuff. You know, I was not any good at the maths and sciences. And so I just kind of naturally gravitated towards comic books. I read comic books because there were pictures, and it was just easier for me to engage that way. Music was probably the first thing that really gripped me. You know, I just was very audio based. So I would hear sounds and kind of mimic them, or hear a song and kind of be able to play it by ear. So, you know, I was all the way over on that side when it comes to crafts or abilities. So I guess I didn't really get involved into acting per se, really like proper training until after college. But we were always making movies. We were giving each other what we'd call adventures. So, you know, we'd be the kids on the block. We'd all be like, okay, you're a Navy SEAL that's gone AWOL, but you're also a futuristic cop. And you guys suddenly find yourself implanted into this situation, and you see a six-armed creature coming this way. What do you do? You know, it was like a live action role-playing game. And but we know we did tabletop role-playing games. We just created stories and created themes, and we even drew our own comic books. Cool. And in fact, the friend that I grew up doing this with is my bandmate.
Oh, nice.
That's how we got our start. We grew up together doing all this stuff. And we had our little band in his basement on Teller Circle in Boulder, Colorado, where we grew up. He got a synthesizer for Christmas. I got a synthesizer for Christmas. And we're like, let's do it. So yeah, that's how that came about. And that's the origins of the name of the band as well. Main Chain was what we called each other as a nickname, like my main man, my best friend, my main guy, my main chain. What's up, chaining? What's up, maining? Nice. So we were like, what are we going to call the group? And we're like, we spent forever trying to get the perfect, and it was just right under our noses. It was like, it's Main Chain, man. It's because it's the dynamic and energy, the creative energy that happens when we work together. Just really cool stuff happens. And so, but you know, there came eventually a point in time, I guess it was college, because I couldn't see the end of the week. Like I had a bunch of friends that were like, I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be an adventurer. I'm going to be doctor. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to be. So but I knew that I wanted to do something creative. So I went to school for film because it was like, you're going to school. My father was like, you're going to school. I kind of, in a lot of ways, I wish I kind of had found a conservatory, or I just joined some, ship that would went around the world. I just got more world experience. I kind of wish that that's what I'd done, but I went to college and I studied film, and but I loved film. Blade Runner is my favorite movie of all time. Yeah, so I love the cyberpunk genre, and it's another reason why I was so excited to get to work in the game Cyberpunk 2077. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until after college that I followed a girl to San Francisco. And my final semester I'd done in Los Angeles, but I followed this girl to San Francisco and was like, I'm going to write my first screenplay. And of course, as I've since found, you want to fall in love in San Francisco. You don't want to go to San Francisco for love, because that ended rather catastrophically. And so I found myself going, what am I going to do? But she wanted to be an actress, and she had gotten involved in this classical acting group called the Philip Bennett Theater Lab. And he was a descendant of Stanislavski. His teacher studied under Stanislavski, and so it's kind of this pure sort of technique of what Stanislavski called the method of physical action, but he really called it ultimately the system. It was always evolving. It was never just static. There it is. It's done. So that really helped me get in touch with kind of myself, and I had a lot of exposure to Shakespeare there, because Shakespeare was lost to me. Regular books were lost to me. I couldn't sit down and just read a regular book, yet alone Shakespeare. So I really had to have somebody kind of crack that nut and introduce me to the iambic pentameter and the Old English and all the different things that he uses to communicate. And then I was like, wow, I was blown away, and really fell in love with it. Got to do some Shakespeare. And so there was always this creative penchant. And I guess it was in 2012, I took my first class for voiceover, because, somebody's like, oh, you got a great voice, you should do voiceover, which of course is like the trope. It's really, it's so much more to do with what you can do with your voice than it is just having a nice voice. But I liken it to basketball. It helps to be tall, but you got to know how to play ball. Yeah. It helps to have a nice voice, but you got to know how to play ball. And I studied, had all that kind of classical theater stage training, but voice acting is its own beast. It's its own flavor. It's still pure acting. It's still coming from yourself and your own experience, but you can't really rely on shrugs or, winks or a look. Everything has to be communicated just from the voice. And so that's something that, that's a corner everybody who does voice acting's got to turn, because there's nothing else to rely on. And that took me a while. I'm a slow study. It takes me generally longer to do anything than the average person. Just a slow study. And the sooner I was able to kind of come to terms with that, the sooner I was able to just be like, okay, that's just how you are. You need to put in more work to get the same kind of level of understanding that a normal, quote unquote, normal person does. But I've always known that I wasn't normal. And, as such, I experienced some scrutiny as a kid, because, if there's any one thing that's different, that sets you apart, you're the target.
For sure. Yeah.
And we moved around. We moved a bunch as a family. So I was always the new kid. So yeah, I got I got my fair share of the bullying attacks and stuff like that, and just kind of had to learn how to make friends on the fly and
Yeah.
not speak up at certain times, and but that created this internal space, I think, for a place to retreat into myself and into the arts. Probably primarily music. Music really was the channel that let me feel things and could transport me places. But drawing and painting. Man, I loved painting. I really would love to get back to that. It's so zen for me. It's so calming. But yeah, it's like all those, to answer the question, my the formation of kind of who I am is a compilation of all these different elements that ultimately I found footing in the voiceover world, and then in music. That those are my I'm just more audibly, but not far behind visually
Yeah.
inclined. So marrying the audio with the visuals, that seems to be where I love to
I
hold
like that
ground.
answer. I found in doing 230 some out of these interviews is that it's never just one thing that gets somebody to where they're at. It's usually a multi-layered cake. There's this thing and that and this and that, and maybe one of those helps propel more than the others, but they all kind of help with that formation. So yeah, it's definitely evident in who and what you are from what I can see. Yeah, all those things track and make sense to me. So we talked in the beginning, you talked about also the music having an inclination for you, and being musically inclined. And we talked about your band, and you talked about the naming of your band, Main Chain. By the way, I found your music was great for listening to while I was doing research on you. Uh,
Oh,
no, seriously,
thanks.
I put
Nice.
your music on repeat and I just let it go. And I found it very calming and relaxing. It totally kind of like set the scene for this
Mm.
conversation in my brain. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Uh, I don't quite know how to describe it. So, so for those who are
Mm.
not yet familiar with your band, tell us about the band, maybe some of your musical influences. And if somebody was to sit
Mm.
down and listen to your
Yeah.
band, what song should they start with and why?
Wow, great questions. Um, well, I've already told you about my love for cyberpunk,
Yes.
the genre, and my bandmate D Ghibli. He shares that. I mean, we grew up doing the same. I explained to you the scenarios. You're a
Right. Yeah.
futuristic cop. I mean, that's how cyberpunk is that. So, but he and I also we also always just had this ballad side of us, and that always seemed to connect more with the female audience. So we had this hard crunch digital cyberpunk side with this soft, flowery, emotional ocean side of the music. And so if you take those two things and combine it in an electronic arena, and we've got guitars and pianos and some things that are acoustic, but most of it's electronic, because our big influences would be New Order, Depeche Mode, The
Sure.
Cure, U2, and so they were really formative for us. New wave, so I guess you would call us synthwave, or new wave. Some people call it, or dark synth, and that's just the sound that always emerges from us. The way that we write songs is we call them vortex sessions, and we get together and jam. It's always starts there. He starts playing something, I start playing something. Sometimes we've got another member, Kylie. His moniker is Citizen. The eyes are ones, and he's kind of been a really core part of it. He's played with us live, and we'd play on the Sunset Strip or whatever. So he really gets the band, and he offers this other cool dimension of it. But of course, D. Ghibli and I, we go back to when we were 12 and 13. So we just get together and we jam, and every time something emerges, if not 4 or 5 different songs in the course of an hour or two of just jamming. And then we take those and then kind of craft them and try and form them into songs. But we want the subconscious to seep through, and we don't want this to be a cookie cutter, because we like all kinds of music. We like pop, we like hip hop, we like classical, but we don't want the genre to get in the way to define what we can and what we can't do. So we're constantly forging our own sound, and that works against us. Insofar that people go, where do I put you? What box do I put you in? But I kind of think that it ultimately will work in our favor, because we will create our own box, and it won't be as easy to have an era pass and be like, oh, that sound auto tune, that's out, or that the high hit, the hi hat, those are out. We'll have our own thing, and so yeah, we make what we think sounds cool to us, and then package it with some cool images, because we're both cinematically inclined too. So it's part of the art form, and we see that as the emerging thing going forward. Socials, kids are on their devices, less and less people going to the theaters, which makes me sad because I love cinema, but I just see the path of its entertainment is in this thing, this glowing rectangle, like what we're doing now. This is to be consumed anywhere, but especially right here on a bus or on a train or in a plane. It's like this is the media thing. So yeah, we want to put the images and the sounds in a blender and come up with some cool stuff, and it keeps us going.
Okay. Well, that actually makes me feel better about not being able to pin down how to describe your music, because like I said, I put it on repeat, and it was just, I found it very calming, very soothing what I was listening to. And I don't know, there's the way I always explain to people, when I hear music that I like and I don't feel inclined to reach up and hit the skip button, it's like there's a little space in the back of your head, and it just finds that little itch, and it just starts scratching it. And it was just like, it was very good. And so, but for me, that's what I liked about it. But so if somebody was to sit down and listen to your stuff, what would you recommend as a place to start?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, Just to Feel Alive is probably the starting point, because that's the Cyberpunk entrance.
Okay.
We've got a whole official music video that goes with that, and that's got more punch, that's got more grit. But then Obsidian, I think, is a nice follow-up to that. There's also a music video for that, and that's the counterpoint, the point counterpoint, where it's the fire and sparks, and then the cool smooth rocks.
That's probably my favorite, to be honest.
Which would be Obsidian.
Yeah,
Obsidian was. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Actually, that was the one I listened to. I listened to them all several times, but that was the one I listened to the most. It was just the vibe of it. It was just very, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how to explain it. I just can tell you that I liked it, and that I listened to it a lot, which is
that's
an odd thing for me to be able to say, because I'm such a fan of music. And I mean, like, I'm literally sitting next to my record collection, which is right just to my left here, and I'm listening to music all day long, and I'm always doing something musically related. And I can tell you what I like about music and what I don't like about music, and what I like about this singer and why I like their voice over this other artist's voice. And I think the thing that was most troubling for me with your music is that I couldn't go, it's this that I like, it's that I like, and this is why. I just could tell you that I liked it, and I liked it a lot. And it was, like I said, it was scratching that little itch. And I'm just like, I don't know why I like this, but I can tell you that I really, really do. And I'm going to keep listening to it. So that's all I got for you on that one. But
I appreciate that. What kind of music do you usually listen to?
This is going to sound very trite, but I'm a very eclectic music listener. I listen to everything from Perry Como to Five Finger Death Punch. I listen to a little bit of everything, and it all depends on the mood that I'm in. Now, primarily, if I have to put a finger down onto something and say, this is what it is, I'm a child of the 90s. I'm a child of grunge. And, I very much into the Seattle sound. And that's where, my brain musically formed. And, you put on some Alice in Chains or some Pearl Jam or some old Soundgarden, and Tim's a very happy boy.
Yeah.
But with that being
Yeah.
said, there was also a lot of The Cure and New Order and a lot of those new wave pop, pop punk bands that were coming out towards the end of the 80s and into the 90s and then into the early 2000s. So there's some weird formations musically in my brain where I can go from listening to it, honestly, an NSYNC song and jam into that because it, I like a song with a good beat and I can dance to it. Although I legally should never be allowed to dance. There's literally no rhythm in this body.
You and me both.
I mean, unless you put some tequila in me, then I've got rhythm all of a sudden. Who knew? But to go from that scenario to something that's very folksy, like some Simon and Garfunkel, and then change that a couple minutes later and put on some Jay-Z, and then go to something else. I'm really honestly, I'm very much all over the board.
I love that. I consider myself kind of all over the board too.
It's a happier place to be.
Yeah, but it's like that's the magic of music. It transports you to different places, and sometimes you want to go here, sometimes you want to go there, and there's something about that art form specifically that ages differently than movies or stand up or art. It's like there's a weird timelessness to it. Even old songs, you're like, oh, that was Led Zeppelin, but that shit still hits. You put some of that on, it's like, damn, this is incredible. Just
put on some Etta James on a Sunday afternoon and just sit back and listen to her, drink some coffee and listen to her go into Sunday Kind of Love. Yeah, it's just perfect. So I like to say that every band, every musician has at least one good song in them, unless it's Elvis Presley, and then there's 0 songs. So I hate Elvis. His corpse can burn in hell.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a whole long story attached to that we don't have time for. But yeah. Anyway, if my mom's listening to this, who's a massive Elvis fan, love you, Mom. She knows. Anyway. All right. So getting back to the topic of Eliah Mountjoy. Now, so one of the things I noticed about you, Eliah, is that whether you're on screen or off, your work career is really pretty varied. You've had the opportunity to be in several really cool sandboxes, both in anime and on live screen, all these different things. Why is it important to you personally and professionally, not just to focus on one thing when you're looking at upcoming projects?
Well, I don't know if I would put it quite the way of, is it important for me to diversify? I told you, like, when I moved to San Francisco, my world fell apart because you move away from your friends and your family, and you're going through a breakup, and you discover the trauma that you've been growing up with that seemed normal, that suddenly you realize, well, this is way not normal, and actually you're pretty broken, and you got to do some work on yourself now to fix that. I just was reduced to a single atom, and that atom was, I'm a storyteller. So whether it's through music or a comic book or just my voice, I mean, one of the things I think that I discovered early on, and early on meaning this time I'm talking about in San Francisco, my ex-girlfriend then, she had one of those new laptops that had a microphone built into it.
Okay.
And I was like, and my brother, one of my brothers, I've got 3 of them, gave me a fantasy book called Sword in the Shannara by Terry Brooks. Classic fantasy. A big, thick, fat page turner.
Right.
And I was really working on trying to, read and be able to focus in that way. But I found myself wanting to do the voices. So because there was this microphone in that computer. So I would instead of just reading the book, I would, I'd be like, oh, that's a cool line. Let me do this. I am the Shade Bremen. I remember doing that and being like, wow, I would love to be a Shade. Because one of my early influences was the Baskin Ranker version of The Hobbit.
Oh,
old, scary version of The Hobbit. And I mean, that thing, it scared the shit out of me. But it also fascinated me. And Gollum and Smog and I mean, Gandalf, they just, the voice, I was like, wow, the voices, they were so iconic to me. So I don't, to answer your question, that captured me, but I just want this to this day. Just want to tell stories. I think stories are the fundamental thing that binds us together as a society. It's the invisible weave that keeps our fabric from falling apart.
I love that.
And these crazy times now, it's like everybody's kind of got their own story and or perspective, and it divides us. What unites us is story, for better and for worse. It could be used for good and for bad.
For
But
sure,
it just seems to be how it's like how we're wired, you know? It goes back to these, those cave drawings with the handprints and the spear hunting. And
for sure.
This is we came from this. This is what we did. This is who we are. This is the song of our people. So I think it's innate. It's the essential essence of us. And I want to tap into that more and more, whether it's music, voiceover, motion capture. I just want to tell stories and connect with people in that story arena.
Oh, I dig that very much. It's interesting too, because you're talking about how that's an innate thing. And at the beginning of the interview, I talked about how, just because I'm a nerd, I love a good origin story. Part of the reason I do that is because, one of my ways of storytelling is I like to know your story. I like to know what makes you tick. Why do you do the things you do? Why is this art form or what you're doing important to you? And I think I found that there's more common thread that, like you said, there's more common thread that unites us, because I hear from so many different people, and whether they're a singer or a writer or an actor or, voice actor or an artist or whatever they may be, whatever career they're having, I find it really thrilling and interesting that there's all these things that have driven people to that, but they may have different ends, but there's a lot of similarities in their beginnings as to why they do the things that they do. And so many stress the point that they want to tell stories, especially in the entertainment business. And I love that. And I'm on the outside going, I don't have a story to tell. But I love hearing why you want to tell your stories. And to me, that's part of the story. And so that's part of the reason why we do the introduction of tell me your origin story. How did you get here? Is because I want to know why you do what you do, what makes you tick. And to me, that's one of the most enjoyable parts of any interview I do, is the getting to know that part about the person that I'm talking to.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah. It makes it more enjoyable for me. And, part of that too is that I used to host another podcast back in the day, a couple years back, called Focused on Forward. And I did that. This was the realization of me after my daughter got out of the hospital after an extended stay, that I was pretty broken and had a lot of things to fix and needed some help and to get through some things. And so I started using that podcast as very cheap therapy. And I was going through other people's stories and hearing how they were moving forward through these traumatic events in their life, and how they were making changes and positively affecting themselves and those around them. And I got so used to hearing people's stories, and I still love that aspect. I don't do that show anymore, but that's one of the things that I brought into this show, is I want to hear your story and know what you're doing and why. And I find that there's all these cool reasons underneath as to why people get started in entertainment and why they do the things that they do. Anyway, I could ramble on about that for hours and on end, but I do enjoy that portion very much.
I think that's endlessly fascinating too. And the healing that comes from being able to connect with somebody or a group of people, and the pain and the devastation that comes by being cut off from other people. Yeah. It's just that's again, that fundamental side of us that we need each other. We do. We're social primates. We can't live in a vacuum.
We tried that for a year. It didn't work.
Amazing how much that messed us up.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Messed the whole world up. That's for sure.
it hit me way harder than I thought it was going to.
Right?
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Eliah. Well, we also can't go through this entire interview without talking about Marvel Rivals, at least for a hot second, because
Yeah.
that is one of the hottest video games out on the market right now. It has really taken a lot of people by storm. Matter of fact, every week my nephew for a while was talking to me and he's like, "Hey, did you get Marvel Rivals yet? You get Marvel Rivals yet? You gonna play me? You gonna play with me? You gonna play with me? You gonna play Marvel Rivals yet?" Like, dude, I'm working on it. I love the kid. Don't get me wrong. Hi, Stetson.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I haven't told him yet that I'm talking to you, but Winter Soldier is one of his favorite characters, so he's going to lose his crap here pretty soon.
You say his name was Stetson?
Yeah, Stetson.
Oh, that's a cool name.
Yeah. His mom's from Texas, and it's a family name, and so
Okay.
yeah. So every once in a while, I'll just call him Hat. But he's a good kid though. So let's, we got people everywhere posting videos about Marvel Rivals, their reviews, they're recruiting friends to come play with them, much like my nephew with me, and all these things. So let's talk about A, what it means to be part of the MCU for you, and B, what do you enjoy most about the Winter Soldier?
Well, it's so amazing for me to be part of the MCU because, like I mentioned, I grew up on comic books.
Yeah.
And DP7 and the X-Men were the ones that really found me. And they were both Marvel. I mean, I loved Superman and Batman and I loved Dark Horse comics, but
Dark Horse was cool.
Yeah, they had the the aliens in the Predator franchise. I was all about that. But comic books found me. They saved me. They saved me from not being able to read and engage in culture in any capacity. So, I grew up on superheroes, and one of my earliest memories is Spider-Man coming and saving me. It's like it's ingrained in me. So to be in any capacity part of any part of a superhero universe is amazing for me. I'm so grateful for it. Specifically Winter Soldier, because I didn't have any choice in that.
Right.
They just cast me as that. So I got super lucky with a super awesome character because, he's Bucky's a lot like me, kind of lost his past and had to rediscover who he is. There's a lot of darkness in his past, but he wants to choose the light forward. And he's got to kind of rediscover how to use his powers for the good, but he wants to. I love that about him. And for me, the most important thing about him is he's had a birthday 2 days ago. He turned 108. The cool thing about him is, his big lesson to us is no matter how old you are, it's never too late to try to become somebody better or to become somebody that you want to be. I love that these kind of themes are woven into comic books. They're it's like its own mythology. The pantheon was created to help humankind better understand themselves. Shakespeare used art to help people better understand themselves and humanity. The MCU came up with this vital, rife, fertile field of characters and stories to help us better understand ourselves. I just think it's magic. And like NetEase, weaving this all together into a game, balancing, gameplay and stats and characters. I don't even know how they did that, but how cool, because now there's this response of we need each other to win. We were just talking about this and how pissed people get when it's like people aren't doing their part. We need a healer and we need a tank and we need and sometimes you do have to be able to shift. You're used to being the, what do they call it? The duelist. Well, the team right now needs you to be a healer. Can you do that? I love I love that challenge to us. Like, okay, well, Punisher's my main, but I guess I'll be Luna Snow. Okay, or Rocket or whatever. And I hope that people can get behind that and be like, if we're a team, different things are going to be asked from you in different times. So you're going to have to adjust. I think that's not always the case. I know there's a lot of gaming culture where there's, just a lot of hate, being trolls spewing their
For sure.
haters going to hate, but but the game is like a piano, which is like life. What you get out of it depends on how you play it. And I hope that people will be inspired to become a team, play as a team.
I love that. That's good. Okay. So here's a question I've asked to some other people who are voice actors for video games specifically. And I find this interesting because now I have to hear my voice because I do a lot of the audio editing and things. And I listen back to every episode and make sure that it's the quality I want, or how, if there's something I could change, make better, all those different type of things. So I get tired of hearing my own voice. Is it gotten weird for you yet to hear yourself in video games, especially when it comes time to hear back the grunts, the screams, the yells?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the first time it got really weird because, I play a game with my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I started getting into games that we could play, Spider-Man 2, I was, street criminal number 7 or whatever. And he was all, he's like this. So it's not really my speaking voice.
Right.
So that wasn't too weird. But by the time we got to Cyberpunk, where I'm playing Kurt Hansen, like the bad guy, Kurt Hansen talks a lot more like this. It's kind of a Jack Nicholson sort of thing. And they wanted him to be a junkyard guard dog. So he's in the game, not to give away any spoilers, but there's when you walk around Dogtown, which is where kind of the area that he controls, there's these big megaphones everywhere. And you hear Kurt talking to people like this. Attention residents of Dogtown. This is Kurt Hansen. And that tripped me out. I was like, oh, fuck, that's me. And that's when I started getting like friends being like, dude, that's crazy. That's you talking to us over the megaphone in Dogtown. So that was weird. And,
sure.
But then, like Bucky, Bucky wasn't weird for me because I really identify closer to him as a character. Because if I get a little closer, a little more personal, this is Bucky. This is how I sound when I'm kind of exposed and getting very intimate. I'm like, that's Bucky. So what's weird is I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm like, everybody sees me now. Oh, yeah, I'm exposed. And except for the ult, when he ramps up, that's a different sort of feeling.
Nice. I like it. Okay. Here's another one of those questions that helps me understand you a little bit better as a person. Not so much as an actor, but I think as a person. And it's just one of those questions I like to know the whys. So somebody asked me this one time on an interview, and I thought, man, that's a really fun question. I'm going to use that. So I stole it, and I use it now. I repurposed it, I'd like to say. If you could, over the course of time, sit down with somebody either alive or dead for a cup of coffee or a beer, just to sit down and talk with them, who would it be and why?
Wow. Alive or dead? I think it would be Shakespeare.
Okay.
We don't even know if Shakespeare was one person or a man. Could have been a woman.
Right.
Could have been a group of women. Could have been a group of, but Shakespeare had such a deep understanding of the human condition. It's almost otherworldly.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want to know these questions you're asking me from that person. or group of people. How did you divine this knowledge? How are you able to kind of glean the essence of humanity and then in a way that transcends eras, weave it into art that speaks to generation after generation after generation? I think it's just mind blowing. And either that or Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan kicked so much ass. I'd want to know, what were you thinking?
Nice. That's quite the juxtaposition there between two people. I dig it. Nice. How did you know so much about people? And why did you kill so many people? All right, good talk.
Right. I think with Genghis Khan, it would be more like, those. This is the approach you have to take with a bad guy, a bad character. They don't think they're being bad. They're doing the right thing, and they're doing the hard thing that other people can't do. I'd want to know. Yeah, I think it'd be he changed the carbon footprint of the world. He killed that many people, and there, whatever percentage of population alive today has his genetics. It's like, what kind of a person is that? I would want to know what kind of a person that was.
Actually, you kind of convinced me. That's actually a really interesting point of view and question now, because I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Yeah, that's a question I'd like to have answered. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Just to hear why. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go with you on that. All right, Eliah, we have made it all the way through to the end, and it's time for our silly question.
Okay.
It's not all that silly, and you can answer it as serious or as silly as you like. Now, this came about because my co-host, Kathleen, her and her daughter were out one night, and somebody asked this question of her daughter, but didn't ask her of her. And so Kathleen thought that was kind of rude and that you should always ask adults this question, that there's not a cutoff where this question shouldn't be asked anymore. That question is, Eliah Mountjoy, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, man, this is not going to be hard for me. It's the T-Rex.
Okay.
But the Stegosaurus was not far behind, and what was once called the Brontosaurus, which I can't remember the.
Yeah, it's got a new name. That's all I remember.
Yeah, there was like 2 or 3 of them I love dinosaurs. I love looking into dinosaurs. I think that it's just so crazy that they existed for so long ago, and that it took these world-ending cataclysmic events again and again, for there to make way for us, to make way for this little marmot that would eventually become a monkey and a sapien, and then
Right.
If I can watch documentaries about dinosaurs, I'm transfixed. I think they're crazy. They're crazy. It's crazy that those things existed.
Oh,
and now
sure.
we dig up these bones.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what? Are you kidding me? This gigantic thing. It's endlessly fascinating to me. I think, and then now the living vestiges are these birds flying around in the sky, and just a version of them. But you see the intelligence from crows and certain parrots, and
for sure, yeah,
they're smart. They are clever, and they got these tiny little bird brains. But they've had millions and millions and millions and millions of years. I mean, we've been around in our current form, maybe 100,000 years. But I mean, no, that's the thing. Nobody even really knows. But that's a blip. It's a blip on the scale. So I think it's so fascinating. Dinosaurs endlessly fascinate me. And the reason the T-Rex is my favorite, to answer your question, imagine that thing.
It'd scare the crap out of you.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably die of a heart attack before it ate you.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Just kick over, be done. Be like the fainting goats, but you wouldn't wake up. So
it's got these tiny arms that are still hanging around as vestiges. Like it's like however many 100 million years, and it's like it doesn't need these things anymore. But it just hasn't had the time to get rid of them. It just needs these legs to run around and chomp things.
I love the fact that, now I look at chickens and I'm like, I walk up to chickens, and look at them and I'll be like, your grandparents were badasses. They'd be so ashamed of you. Uh, I talk to chickens.
Have you ever seen a chicken go after a mouse?
Oh, yeah, they're relentless.
Yeah, you release a mouse and you're like, oh, yeah, you're a dinosaur. You're a monster.
Oh, yeah.
You just have this like, I'm just going to eat you and then procreate.
Yeah. I live out in the country. So, I've got a lot of my friends have chickens that they raise as pets and, they get the eggs from and all those things. So it's kind of funny to watch them, and you go watch them, and it's very, the things that you see on the movies and the educational films about dinosaurs. You're like, oh yeah, look at that right there. They're doing the thing. They're doing the walk right there. So,
right. I wish I could have chickens. I think that would be so great.
We're actually looking into it. I made a joke with my wife a while back that once chicken eggs hit $7 a dozen, we could go buy chickens. And then the other day, in our area, chicken eggs were for a dozen like $6, but you could buy a chicken at the local Tractor Supply store, an actual chicken for like $5. And I'm like, we can actually buy the chickens cheaper than we can buy the eggs now. So we're going to go get some chickens.
That's what I would do. And I just have to watch out for coyotes or foxes or whatever might get in. There's no foxes around here, but there's definitely coyotes.
We've got coyotes, foxes. We've got some bobcats. So I'd have to be careful. And then there's my own cat, who is the most murderous little thing I've ever seen in my life. He brings, his kills to the back door daily. So,
yeah. Cats are definitely monsters. I've got 3. Yeah.
Eliah, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've honestly, this has been a fun conversation for me. I've enjoyed it. But where can our listeners go to find out more about you and what you've got coming up?
Yeah, Tim, I've had a great time having this conversation. And from one nerd to another, thanks for having me on. And I'd love to come back on at whatever point you've got space for me.
Deal.
Yeah, my socials are all my name, Eliah Mountjoy. And I've got a signing coming up for Winter Soldier stuff on the 21st of this month. So there's a Streamly. It's streamly.com/Eliah Mountjoy. If anybody wants to get a signed print, I'd be happy to. And but I just love connecting with the community and over whatever game or whatever song. Like I said, I think we're bound together by stories, and that's the thread that keeps us together. And if we have something in common, great. If we don't, that's also great. We might not be able to connect as much, but the love's still there. So find me.
Dig it. All right. We will put those links down in the show notes down below so people can check you out on all your different socials. And we'll put the link to the Streamly down below as well so they can make sure to find you there. Now, guys, if you haven't already, this is a great time to remind you that following our show here on YouTube is the most important thing you can do to help ensure that we get more amazing guests like Eliah here today to come on the show, talk with us, and give you some funny moments to be able to listen to as well. So if you haven't already, please consider following our show. It helps us more than you'll ever know. And make sure that you go check out Eliah's work. Now, not just his acting work, because there will be links down there but below as well. But honestly, go check out Main Chain. I very much enjoy his music. He and his bandmate have done some really cool stuff out there. So please go check it out and give them some love there as well. And we'll put links to Main Chain in the show notes down below as well so they can find your band. So, Eliah, again, thank you for being on the show. Guys, thank you for listening to the FSF podcast. And until next time, may the force be with you as you continue to live long and prosper. Goodbye.
Over and out.
Copyright 2025 FSF Podcast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.